This particular moment, I couldn't sleep. My anxiety was through the roof. I'm freaking out. So I called 911. I called 911. I'm this little kid. I'm crying my eyes out. The reason why I say that, I'll give you how I know and why I'm an expert on living in fear. Fear doesn't always scream. It manifests itself quietly in different ways. Silence, shame, hesitation. So much more than that, but we'll focus on those three for now. The reason why I say that, and I'll give you how I know and why I'm an expert on living in fear. Because from 8 until 27, I was afraid almost every single day of my life. I didn't realize it, but I was. And even that doesn't seem fully accurate. I'm sure I realized it in hindsight as a child, but I didn't know it was so deeply seated within me that it was the reason why I was making the choices that I did. So I'll go back as to why I can say that. So my parents got divorced when I was 8 years old. And my father, my biological father, very abusive man, very broken, living in fear himself. He had lived in fear his whole life because of his abuse he received as a child from both his father and his mother. And then that fear forced him to make the choices that he made. He's a convicted felon, narcissist, master manipulator, and very intelligent, high IQ. And when you put all three of those things together, you get a pretty dangerous person. My biological father had the capacity to enchant an entire room, but also bog your mind, heart, soul in the most complex, weaved narratives possible. And I'm just going to give one example of how he weaponized me against my mother and the rest of the world, basically, when I was 8 years old. So it was about a year into the divorce. A lot of things had happened up until that point. But for me, some things are still repressed. And so as I'm on my own journey of reflection and basically talking a lot with my mother, finding out more and more about the things that transpired to me when I was a child, we'll have plenty to build on. But I'm 9 years old, and at one point, my biological father and I, we were living in an apartment, and it was a pretty nice one, actually. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, in a nice neighborhood. I personally don't know how we got in there, but, that's where we ended up. And what ended up happening was, one of his issues was that he was a womanizer. He was addicted to gambling also. Alcoholic. And he liked to go out and party a lot. post divorce with my mother, like he released his inhibitions, as it were. But what he would do was he would use me as a cover. So the nights and days that I was supposed to have visitation with him, because my mom had, I think, majority custody. I still don't even know all the details from the courts back then. But I was living with my mom most of the time, and I was with him on weekends and one day during the week. And then sometimes there would be more. I don't know why. But anyway, what ended up happening initially for a while because he would always have like months or years with the appearance of doing better. And then he would just like fall off and it would just like explode. He had no capacity for stability whatsoever, very chaotic person. Working for this person or the next, or not working, and then being so talented at being able to speak and tug at people's hearts. He would somehow convince people to support him, and it's a whole thing. But anyway, so one of the things that he would start doing early on is, because my mother was just trying to do the right thing. She was pursuing him for child support for a billion different reasons. He had done some absolutely insane things before they got divorced. And just in the state of Florida, it's natural. It just, not that it's right for everyone, but in this situation, the courts favored my mother just because of everything. And I wasn't able to come to the realization that she was right until way later, till after he died, because that's when she and I started to really have some important conversations, and I had the courage to ask her questions about what was going on back then. And it's just insane to me, and part of why I haven't talked about this yet is because I still carry the shame of like, how easily manipulated I was. I mean, it was absolutely insane. Like, I was manipulated to the max. I hung on his every word, and I listened to him over her. It was very hard. But anyway, so one of the things that he started to do was use my visitation with him as cover-up days, because I believe he was under scrutiny by the courts. They were like closely monitoring him, and for somehow, I guess the days that I had him, maybe it's yeah, I don't know how or why, but what ended up happening was, at this point we move into this place, and for several weeks, maybe a few months, because when you're young, sometimes it just seems like a very long time. So at minimum several weeks, I would say at least 5 to 6 weeks minimum. He would go out while I was supposed to be in visitation with him, and he would stay out. So at first it started with just a few hours. He would go out for a few hours, come back, we would watch a movie, or we wouldn't spend time at all. He would like feed me, and I would play video games, and he would do his thing. Or we would hang out, like watch a movie, whatever. And then it just extended. He would go out longer. I would be at home longer by myself. And I was only 9 years old. If you know the psychology on a 9-year-old, someone who experienced divorce, someone who experienced an ugly divorce because of him, not because of my mother, Um, yeah, by then my mind had already been going through so many things. I mean, this is, secure attachment, all of that stuff. I'm gonna have to start taking notes on like the psychological terms so I can bring more depth and weight to what I'm saying. Uh, backed by the science. But by that time, my mind was like, yeah, I don't even, I wasn't functioning well. I was just coping. Um, but anyway, so yeah, it got to the point to where I was starting to have extreme anxiety. Like I feel it in my chest even now because I've never talked about it with anyone, not even my mother. She remembers it, and I'm sure if I talk to her about what ended up happening, she remembers it. But I was going through extreme anxiety just being by myself, and I'm an only child, so I was alone for hours and hours and hours. And yeah, I've had video games, I had my books, I had, TV and film, but I was 9, you know. And then on top of it, he had weaved into me this unnatural concern for his well being, you know, sort of obsessive, like, yeah, almost as if, like, if my life depended on his life, um, which is insane to say, but I think that's probably accurate. So, him being gone, you know, I remember, like, the first couple times I definitely was concerned, but you can play video games for like 3, 4, 5 hours and the time goes by quickly. But we're talking about 8, 10, 12 hours. Then it starts to get like weird, um, and so I started experiencing like anxiety and panic attacks because I would hear neighbors. And then I was just wondering like, when are you coming home? And this is I was 9, so this is 21 years ago, 2004. So yeah, there were cell phones, but I don't think I had one. I think in the house there was a landline. We had a landline, but it wasn't like one attached to the cord. It was like one of the newer ones, the wireless phone that you like stuck in the base. Um, so I'm freaking out, and I'm having like a total meltdown. I don't have my mom's telephone number memorized yet. It was after this event that I memorized her telephone number because I never wanted to go through this again. But also, too, what ended up happening was I got punished. So I was like, man, it's crazy. So yeah, my dad, he goes out, my biological father, um, he goes out, leaves the house at like 6 p.m. And I remember it's like 3 in the morning and I can't sleep. Um, and this has already been going on for weeks and weeks on end. And I think even one time, like maybe the week before, I fell asleep before he got, like, that happened a lot where I would fall asleep before he got home. So then I would, he would come in whenever. I don't even know sometimes what time he would come in. But this particular moment, I couldn't sleep. My anxiety was through the roof. I'm freaking out. So I called 911. I called 911. I'm this little kid. I'm crying my eyes out. And, I'm like, I don't know where I am. I don't have the address memorized. I knew I was in my local city. I might have known like one of the cross streets, but I'm freaking out. And so I'm talking with this lady on the phone, or a guy, that whoever the dispatcher was on the phone. They're like trying to walk me through it. I give them my name. And so they send a unit over to the house, and at this point it's like 5 a.m. or something like that. And I don't remember if he was home or not. Yeah, no, he wasn't home. So it was 5 a.m. and the unit. It's hard because the timelines in my head are not exact. I'm just going based off of the memory. But what ended up happening was they send a unit over. The guy knocks on the door. I open the door. He comes in. He inspects the house. I just said, yeah, like. And at this point, too, I already felt guilty about it. Like, I felt guilty about it. Um, as a 9-year-old child, I felt like I had betrayed my father. But at the same time, I'm like shitting my pants. And so they end up calling my mom. They wake her up. It's like 5, 6 in the morning. She is living, I don't remember if she and I had moved into our own place yet at that point or if we were still with my grandparents. But yeah, so they call her to come pick me up. And yeah, like she comes and gets me. She is losing it. Like my poor mother, man, she would get so upset with my biological father that she would just like get heart palpitations and she's losing it and I'm crying my eyes out and I was scared. I was scared because I knew that whenever the next time I saw him, he would like destroy me for it. And not physically. He didn't hit me, but he was, like I said, master in like just destroying your brain and injecting his poison into your like very soul, you know. And so it wasn't the first time that this lie was introduced into my foundation of who I was as a person, part of my identity. But what I realized is that in that moment anyway, obviously not to be true now, but in that moment and in my circumstance, that if I told the truth, I would die. And if I lied, I would die. You know? That even if I won, I still lost. And that was what truth was for me. Every time I needed to tell the truth, I would have to make a mental evaluation of what was going to happen to me if I told the truth and what would happen if I was going to lie. And 9 out of 10 times, I was too scared to tell the truth, so I would lie to avoid pain. Because no matter what, with my biological father, I always lose. I always lost. He's since passed. Thank God. But yeah, truth equaled loss. Lie equaled win. Even though it was a temporary, vapid win at the highest price, which was my soul, who I was as a person. Yeah. And so from there, I just became petrified of telling the truth. And lying became advantageous to my survival at that point because, like I said, my biological father would punish truth. If I told the truth about how I was feeling, if I told the truth about what he was doing, I was punished. And like I said, it wasn't physical, it was not only would he lecture me about it and tell me why and like pin it all on me, that, you know, because of that, now my mother is gonna hurt him. Because of me, now he has to work harder. Because of me, you know, I'm gonna make it happen that he's gonna go to jail. It's gonna be my fault that I can't see him anymore, It's going to be my fault if something bad happens to him. It was always my fault. And so, but here's what I discovered about fear years later. Fear is always tied to a lie that you believe. And so, because I lived afraid for many years of my life, one of the many lies, there's probably still today that I have to excavate and dig out, but that was one of the lies that I first started believing at a young age, that even if you win, you still lose, and that the cost of telling the truth is not as costly as lying. And when you start living like that, you're not even living. You're just surviving. You're a shell. You're not a person. Because integrity only comes from being truthful. And if you're not a person of integrity, you're not even living. You're just suffering in your own little world, in your own little black abyss of death. And there is a price for telling the truth, just like there is a price for telling the lie. But the price for telling the lie is always going to be more than telling the truth. Every time you decide to tell the truth, you may pay a price, but not only will you get stronger for it, but your life will always end up better. Even if it's the ugliest, most horrible truth, better the truth than a lie. So, and that's how it works. Fear shows up quietly. Things that you suppress, things that you ignore, things that are too hard for you to observe or look at about yourself or your surroundings or the people around you. Here's the thing though. Every wall that's built can be torn down brick by brick by truth. You have to do it. If you don't start telling the truth, you will pay the price. I know. Because the lack of truth in my life got me to that point where I no longer wanted to live. Because you will end up lost, aimless, not knowing who you are, not knowing why you're here, not knowing the purpose of life. So, I want to ask you guys a few questions. Where is fear manifesting in your life right now? Put it in the comments. Don't be ashamed. You don't have to be. It's another lie. You never have to be ashamed for telling the truth. The only reason why society or culture makes you feel ashamed for telling the truth is because you just haven't encountered someone who's willing to receive it. Whatever it is, tell the truth. Even if not here, to someone, or to God, in reflection and prayer, or write it down. Tell it to yourself. Put it in a journal. Is it silence? Is it shame? Is it humiliation? One of those things. Hesitation? Figure it out. Put the work towards figuring it out. And what's one brick you can tear down today? Just do it. One truth you've avoided to tell, even if it's the smallest one. Every choice you make rewires your brain. Your neurology literally changes with every choice you make. If you're hurting, you don't have to walk alone. You can join our free Discord. The link is below. I'll be more than happy to hear your story. I'll be more than happy to allow you to use the space to tell the truth. Whatever it is. If you're a leader, come deeper with us in school. We're putting together curriculums and formulas that will 10, 20, 30, 50, 100x your business because you're building a business on integrity and truth. And you're willing to be honest about yourself, to yourself, for yourself. Which as a leader, you know, the best investment into your company, other than your employees, is your personal growth. You are your own ceiling. Wherever that business is, it'll get capped. You are your own ceiling. So join our school. We're building a community of leaders who are living fearless, blazing the path of building something with permanence. Legacy only lasts when it's built on honesty and integrity. Never a lie. And if this spoke to you, keep going with the Brick by Brick playlist. Every video we make is a brick in a house of truth and wholeness. Keep building. Talk to you soon. Love you guys.